You're listening to the Thursday morning edition here on WCBU. I'm Rich Drager. The Illinois legislature had to work past their constitutional deadline to pass an annual budget last week, and there was plenty of other business lawmakers didn't get to, including data centers. Democrat Dave Koehler of Peoria is the assistant majority leader in the Illinois Senate. In this interview with WCBU Capitol correspondent Evan Holden, Koehler explains why the legislature went down to the 11th hour, again, to pass a budget over the objections of Republicans. They say Democrats are trying to rush through legislation without time for review or debate.
It's a process, and this is not unusual. Usually there are revisions to the budget up to the last minute, but you got to remember that 95% of the budget is what the governor introduced when he gave his State of the Budget address. And so people have that out there. They've known what the particular details are. As you get into the final sessions of the spring session, there's going to be changes. So, I would say that anybody who complains that they didn't see the budget, they weren't looking. They didn't take the time to really dig into it because, everybody knows really what's there.
Well, why not file it earlier so you have a few more days of committee hearings and discussion in the public health?
Yeah, no, it was filed 3 times. Like I say, the budget is a progression of things, and so they filed one draft, I think, about 3 days before. Then they made some tweaks and filed the second draft, and there was some more corrections made, and then they filed the third draft, which is the final draft that they passed. So, there's plenty of time for people to understand thoroughly what's in the budget.
Switching to a different topic, data centers have been another big issue. Bloomington Normal recently put a moratorium on data centers, and areas near Peoria have either canceled data centers or are currently looking into it. With the Power Act not passing this year, and then Pritzker now saying that he's going to create an executive order to pause tax credits, which wasn't in the budget. How do you feel about the regulations on data centers, and what do you want to see?
If it's a temporary pause, I don't have any problem with that. I think that we do need to pass the SMART Act. We need to come back in veto session in November and make sure that goes through, because that is the protection that people are looking for. There's really 3 issues when you talk about data centers. One is the electricity and what's going to do to other consumers who depend on electrical service and don't want to pay through the nose just because an AI data center comes in. The second issue is water. Bloomington now is one of 2 spots in the state where gray water is available for sale. The other is Decatur. Representative Chung and I passed a bill last year which allowed the Bloomington Sanitary District to be able to sell gray water. That's what you should be using for data centers. You shouldn't be taking drinking water out of the aquifer to run a data center. The third issue is noise, and that one's really an issue of trying to zone it right, whether it's a municipality or a county. They have to zone it such that it doesn't impose undue noise for neighbors and neighborhoods. But I also don't want to be hypocritical, because anybody who uses a smartphone or an iPad or a computer, you are using a data center. It's not in my backyard syndrome here.
2 big insurance bills were passed that were supported by Governor J.B. Pritzker, one dealing with home insurance and the other with auto. With State Farm and Country Financial being headquarters in Bloomington Normal, which you represent, how do you feel about the potential new regulations if Pritzker signs the bills into law?
On the home insurance, that bill was initially proposed, and then it was amended to do more of a compromise. I don't think the insurance companies are jumping up and down about it, but it was a much better compromise. On the car insurance, everybody has gone through this where their car insurance is up. I know they had a little bit more heartburn with that, but it was something that I think the governor pushed because he felt it was good for consumers in Illinois. So I'm presuming that he will sign both those bills.
I'm Evan Holden with State Senator Dave Koehler. Are there any bills that you are hoping to see either come back during veto session or that you're going to be filing again since it's going to be a new General Assembly next year? Are there any bills that you're looking to support either in the fall or next year's session?
Yes, there's been an area of concern that I've had with soil and water conservation districts. They were reduced in funding several years ago. They've been kept at that level of funding for year after year. They wanted to get an increase because really at the level of funding they can't do the job that they need to do. And I would maintain that soil and water is Illinois' most valuable resource. That's why agriculture is number one. It's because we have rich soil and we have plenty of water, and so we have to manage that. So I'm going to be working again with the soil and water conservation districts to try to see if we can't get something done on that. Another issue that I've been working on for a couple of years now, and with Farm Bureau and with the other agricultural interests, is making sure that we can make some changes in how estate tax hits farmers, because too often there are small farms when the farmer dies and leaves it to their family. Sometimes the family has to sell the farm just to pay the estate taxes. That's not right.
That has struggled to pass. You've filed this obviously multiple years. Do you see anything currently different that might help it pass next year?
Well, I know that one of the obstacles we've run up against is that there are people who agree with us, but they really want to see a whole estate tax either abolished or drastically overhauled. I agree with that, but let's at least get our foot in the door and to start by trying to save the small family farm. And so my argument to them is that yes, but let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good. Let's do what we can to help the family farms be saved.
That was State Senator Dave Koehler speaking with WCBU's Evan Holden. You're listening to Morning Edition here on WCBU, Peoria Public Radio, part of the NPR network.